this war look like a success. Yeah, his job got a whole lot harder, and he started earning that $1 million salary, multi-million-dollar salary.
Pro-Israeli billionaires poured record-breaking amounts of money into this tiny little district. If you don't think that $25 million is enough to sway 5,000 voters, just not living in political reality.
I'm sure Will Chambers is about to do exactly that. We are so used to lying and obfuscation and weasel words, as we often see from Will Chambers here.
Oh, get over yourself, Buckley.
I don't think Massie would have won if Israel had not spent $1.
When a mosque is attacked in the US, Republican politicians are silent. You can't find Democrats who do the same when there's a synagogue attack or anything equivalent.
Thomas Massie's bruising defeat last night was, according to most mainstream commentary, proof that President Trump remains in total control. He may be battered and bruised by the broken promises and the war in Iran, but he's still the kingpin and the kingmaker. Trump's takedown of Massie crystallizes his grip on the GOP.
Yeah, and that Indiana sweep. But here's the thing, though. The Indiana sweep look way more official. Why? Because they didn't overspend on it. Massie, he probably had maybe like $500,000 to $1 million of campaign funding. They gave his opponent $38 million to sit there and put AI slop in front of boomers. Like, are you serious?
Said USA Today. Thomas Massie's defeat tightens Trump's grips of the New Republic. And so, word for word, did the BBC. The New York Times, mixing things up a bit, said Trump tightens his grasp on the GOP. The question they ought to be asking is, who is gripping or grasping President Trump? Pro-Israel donors and lobbyists spent at least $15 million on the campaign against Thomas Massie. It's the most expensive primary in U.S. history. Millions of dollars came from Aipac, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. You might therefore assume that Massie was a raving anti-Semite who used his platform to trash Israel at every opportunity. But he didn't. In fact, until recently, he barely spoke about Israel at all. And that apparently was his main offense.
There's a foreign interest group called Aipac that's, got the ear of this current speaker and demanded 16 votes in April on Israel or the Middle East. We haven't had 16 votes in April on the United States in Congress. Ostensibly, it's a group of Americans who lobby on behalf of Israel. They're for anything Israel. And they're a very effective lobbying group. They get in there. They try to get me to write a white paper as a candidate, for instance, for Congress. They almost get
on what?
On Israel. And I wouldn't do it. And they said, why? And I'm like, I don't do homework for lobbyists, right? I'm like, I didn't like writing term papers at college. I'm not writing one for you.
Well, the campaign against Thomas Massie painted a grim picture of a scheming figure of dubious morals who went out of his way to make life difficult for Trump. In fact, he voted with the Republican Party more than 90% of the time. Massie is staunchly against expensive military interventions and foreign aid, especially the Iran war.
It was the complete propaganda against Massie that absolutely pissed me off. They're pretty much saying that, he was voting against Trump in the big, beautiful bill. No, he voted no because you guys wanted to push no AI regulations for 10 years straight. And then he also said that, I ain't gonna lie, you guys could go harder. You guys could be better with the cuts. I don't think it's MAGA enough. And you know what? Even back then, I think you guys can even go back to my criticism of Massie. I was like, look, they're already crying about the cuts we're making. Massie, you're trying to give these guys a heart attack. I like where your heart's at. I like where your head's at. But you're gonna give the Dems a heart attack. So if anything, Massie was more MAGA than everybody else. He was more MAGA than Trump on the big, beautiful bill. He was actually trying to get what Americans voted for. And he settled on us a couple things, but hey, at the end of the day, he did vote yes on it, and he made sure he got that BS pork that was in it. But all right.
He's a leading critic of wasteful government spending and unmanageable debt. He's campaigned relentlessly for the total release of the Epstein files and for the prosecution of men whose crimes they expose. In other words, his platform is a lot like the one that got Trump elected. So how did he become MAGA enemy number one? Well, it probably has something to do with statements like this.
People who are funding the ballroom, the people who are funding the arch, the people who are funding the rebranding of the Kennedy Center, these are the people who are also funding my opponent. These are the people who have the ear of the president. These are the people who are dominating our foreign policy decisions. They're the billionaires. And these are also the same people who are in the Epstein files.
Damn.
So a Massie gone, at least for now, it's very reasonable to ask what it all means for the future of a MAGA government in some turmoil. Has Trump tightened his grip on MAGA, or has the donor
I'm gonna be real with you, it just made it seem like Trump just sold out to donors. That's really what it seems like. He sold out to donors. He just let a whole bunch of donors pull up and pretty much buy out that seat. Like, I'm gonna be real with you. I honestly think that nobody knew who this guy was. The man didn't pull up for no debates, and even during his victory party, bro had barely anybody there. But Massie got a whole screaming crowd at his defeat party. So something seems really off. I'm not gonna say that it's rigged, but something just seems really off. And not just the fact that they put $38 million into it. That's not the only thing that's off here.
tightened its grip on Trump. Joining me to debate all this is Will Chamberlain, Senior Counsel of the Article 3 Project, Glenn Greenwald, the host of System Update, Clay Travis, founder of Outkick, and Buckley Carlson, the former Republican strategist and speechwriter. Well, welcome to all of you. Any Arsenal fans amongst you before we get anywhere?
Sure, I'll be an Arsenal fan today.
Thank you, Will Chamberlain. In that case, you're going to get an easier ride than normal. For American viewers who are a little mystified by what an Arsenal is, if it doesn't involve the US military, I can tell you it's my football team. I'm not going to use the word soccer in one of my own shows. And we've just won the Premier League for the first time in 22 years, which has made me the happiest human being on God's earth. And on that positive note, I now expect you very quickly to be tearing each other from limb to limb. Glenn Greenwald, it's an interesting scenario, this, involving Thomas Massie and indeed other people who appear to have been crunched in this primary race by Trump's political fist. And yet at the same time, you see a lot of the conservative right at war with each other. So what are you reading into the sort of overall picture here about what's going on?
Oh, I've been interviewing Thomas Massie for years prior to October 7th when he was really not talking much about
I don't know. This would kill me too. Like, look, when Trump started out going against donors, saying, I don't need these donors, I got my own money and all this good stuff. Well, of course, he quickly gave in to the donors. But let's be real. He went in on the image of, look, we got to turn against these donors. Like, these donors be pretty much like buying out these politicians so they go against the American people. Then what does this man do? Send the donors after Thomas Massie, who the American people actually like. Like, that is a wild. I ain't gonna lie, that's crazy work right there. To sit there in front of the American people and sit there and talk about, oh, these donors and how they're corrupt and all this and they corrupt politics, then go send those same donors after Thomas Massie. That is crazy work.
Israel at all, applying though the same exact principles, applying to other issues as he's now applying to Israel, including being one of the leading opponents, for example, of the Biden administration's policy of financing the war in Ukraine on exactly the same grounds. He opposes U.S. financing of the Israeli military and the Israeli wars, which is people in Israel are doing extremely well. Ukraine is not our government's obligations. American citizens are. Our towns are falling apart. People don't go to college. They can't afford healthcare for their kids, the most basic things that a decent country provides for their citizens. And yet we're spending billions of dollars on countries like Israel, where millions of people have higher standards of living in that country than they do here.
I'm telling you, man, if things get any worse, people are going to have to start living like Indian and Muslim families. It's gonna be like 7 to 8 people per house, bro. You, your mom, your brothers, sisters, and a couple cousins. And that's gonna be the only way anybody can afford to live anywhere if it gets any worse.
In the United States, he's been the leading cause or advocate of privacy rights and opposed to domestic spying. So he's always been somebody who's been a leading advocate of many of the principles, including, by the way, free speech that the MAGA movement claimed before Trump got back into power again, that were most important to them. He aligned perfectly with it. The difference, though, is that he became an outspoken opponent of the U.S. relationship with Israel after October 7th, when the U.S. started spending not just $4 billion a year on Israel, but 20 and 25 billion, and however you count, far more than that, in the wake of all the wars that Israel was involved with. And because of that, obviously, Trump was a major factor. But the real difference in this race was that 3 pro-Israeli billionaires led by Miriam Adelson, who Trump himself said is more loyal to Israel than she is to the United States, spent most of her life as an Israeli, was in the IDF, poured insane amounts of money, record-breaking amounts of money into this tiny little district where all you need is 50,000 votes to win. And if you don't...
Yeah, Muriel Adelson is like a gambling mogul. I mean, she got gambling operations, I believe, overseas and in America. I'm pretty sure for overseas, but I think some of her operations got shut down in America, but you never know. She's still ultra wealthy, ultra Zionist. So, and ultra, well, I'm not going to say the last part, but you guys get my point though. She's a big time donor and she's a top, and she's an ultra Zionist. AKA, she's all for Israel and not really for the US. And everything she puts money into, this is why her putting money into that election was a red flag for everybody, because she only puts money into anything that's within the interest of Israel. So if she put money into Trump, it was because Trump was within the interest of Israel. If she puts money against Thomas Massie opponent, is because he aligns within the interest of Israel. And we're talking about a guy that's pro-draft, pro-war, pro-bullshit. Like, I'm gonna be real with you. It's kind of like the people in Kentucky that voted for the other guy. You kind of sold your country out just a little bit, I could put too much on you, but hey, you could have held strong just a little bit. Like, I'm sorry, but I think that as MAGA, you guys should not trust donors the way you guys did with Thomas Massie. I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. I'm like, bro, you're telling me y'all putting $38 million behind a guy we done elected like 4 times, and nobody seen that as funny. Y'all just went to this guy anyway because they had a good enough AI slot for you, and they had some pretty good AI slot. They had Thomas Massie walking into the room with like AOC and I forgot, or no, Rashida Tlaib or something like that. And I'm pretty sure they said some pretty convincing things, but you voted for the man 4 times. He stood for your values, and then you sell him out for 38 million. But then again, most of these voters probably don't even know the funding that was going into this guy. And I'm sorry, but how can you trust a candidate who didn't pull up to the debate? So y'all voted for a guy where you did not hear his ideals, you didn't hear him defend his positions or anything like that. Y'all just voted for him because F Massie? I mean, I guess that's what $38 million do.
Think that $25 million is enough to sway 5,000 voters, which was the difference in the race, from one side to the other. You're just not living in political reality. We saw Aipac do that last year. In 2024, they broke their own record. This year, they did it to Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, put $15 million in both of those primary races. That is a massive story that people who Trump himself says have either primary loyalty or at least equal loyalty to a foreign country are overriding what polling shows are people's opposition to Israel, to the war in Iran, and just drowning our politics in enormous amounts of unlimited money in service of this foreign country. And not saying Trump wasn't a major role. Obviously he was. He has a huge grip on especially Republican primary voters. But if you deny that that was at least as big of a factor, then you're just insulting the intelligence of anybody listening.
Well, Will Chamberlain.
I'm sure Will's about to do that.
Sorry, Buckley, what was that?
I was going to say, I'm sure Will Chambers is about to do exactly that.
I'm about to ask him to do exactly that.
Travis, I was going to preface
it by saying that just before we came on air with this show, Donald Trump
I swear, bro, this guy Will Chamberlain is the only one of the few guys I know that can say incredibly dumb stuff intelligently.
Has gone public about a growing sense that people are getting that it's Israel trying to call the shots in Iran, that they forced him into the war in the first place, that they don't want it to end. They think that America should re-engage in the military strikes and so on. And Donald Trump's reacted pretty forcefully. Let's take a listen.
What have you said to Prime Minister Netanyahu about Iran and how long to hold off on strikes?
He's fine. He'll do whatever I want him to do. He's a very, very good man. He'll do whatever I want him to do, and he's a great guy. To me, he's a great guy. Don't forget, he was a wartime prime minister, and he's not treated right in Israel, in my opinion. I'm right.
Because even his people recognize that he's basically committed a genocide, and also that he's putting Israel in danger multiple times, not just with his funding of Hamas, but through his constant attacking of, southern Lebanon, which pretty much brings the wrath of Hezbollah upon them. And then, of course, with the 12-day war with Iran, where it was raining down missiles on them. So it's fair to say that I don't think the Israeli people are, completely done with him, but I'm pretty sure they're pissed off at him. Because, let's keep it real. But then again, we're going to get into some Israeli media because you know what? I just remember that interview that I was watching. Like, what was it? The Israeli media was interviewing Tucker Carlson, and now that I think about it, I think most of them are that brainwashed to what's going on. Like, they truly don't see how their government has created all of their problems, just like how we don't see our government has created all of our problems. So I guess we can relate to them on that note.
Now, at 99% in Israel, I could run for prime minister. So maybe after I do this, I'll go to Israel, run for prime minister. I had a poll this morning. I'm 99%. So that's good. But no, he's a wartime prime minister, and I just don't think they treat him well.
Mr. President, what do you do?
I think they have a president over there that treats him very poorly.
So a lot to unpack there, Will, not least the idea of Prime Minister Donald Trump of Israel. We'll watch that development with interest. But this central point around Thomas Massie, which I find really fascinating, is that pretty much everything he stands for, and we'll park the Israel part of this to one side for a moment, but pretty much everything else, as Glenn articulated, would be the kind of stuff that Trump campaigned on when he got re-elected. I mean, it was, I'm not going to meddle in foreign wars, particularly in the Middle East. I'm going to take care of cost of living, America first, et cetera, et cetera. And people have looked at this and gone, well, you've done the complete opposite. And here's Thomas Massie, who's actually continued to stand by the positions that Trump was espousing as a candidate, leaving a lot of people a little bit mystified here about why Massie becomes the bogeyman if it doesn't involve his criticism of Israel. Because again, what Glenn said is correct. You can not be a conspiracy theorist to recount factually that there were millions and millions of dollars pumped in by Israeli-friendly billionaires against Massie. And the only reason that could be, it seems to me, is because of his increasingly critical rhetoric about the Israeli government. What do you say?
Well, I think that's just simply mistaken. Remember, Thomas Massie wasn't broke here. He had over $10 million of his own to spend, sourced from libertarians nationwide. So if he wanted to get his message out there, he easily did so. And the problem was that his message was schizophrenic. And it's not Israel, it's the big, beautiful bill. Remember, I mean, you POTUS this.
See, in that cap. Remember, he never said, bro, Massie never voted for the big, beautiful bill. He didn't vote no for the big, beautiful bill in its entirety. It was because of the AI BS and because he felt like we could get better cuts on the programs that we were supposed to cut through Doge. Like I said, if you look back at Thomas Massie's argument for voting no on the big, beautiful bill, it was because he felt like, well, there wasn't enough cuts, and this whole no AI regulation for 10 years is ridiculous. And I mean, the way they're pushing data centers now, I ain't gonna lie, I'm kind of happy. I'm low-key appreciative that he got that out the way.
Statistic where you said 90% of the time he supported the Republican Party. That's a little bit misleading because the big, beautiful bill was the one bill last year that essentially contained the entirety of the president's agenda. And by voting against that, he voted against basically everything President Trump ran on. Massive increases in border security funding for the wall, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, massive decreases in some discretionary spending. So it was the key part of his agenda, and he was the only Republican to vote against it. And so then you look at what was the message? You say pro-Israel donors spent, but what did they say to voters in Northern Kentucky? They replayed President Trump's rally where he endorsed Ed Galbraith, called Thomas Massie the worst congressperson in the history of the country, disloyal to him, disloyal to the party. And I don't think the voters of Northern Kentucky are stupid. They voted.
I mean, bro, if it was disloyal of this man to make sure that AI had to make sure that AI just didn't run rampant for 10 years, I'm sorry, but like, how could y'all frame this guy as one, against Trump, and two, not make America, like, not MAGA? Because honestly, really, he's America first, and I think he's honestly more America first than, well, our entire Congress. And honestly, I think we just lost the best guy. Because what was it? He has like a Liberty score of 99. Like, I'm sorry, but you can't really beat that, bro. Even Democrats like him. Of course, they disagree with the man, but they still respect that he has some type of integrity, and he don't sit there and just be partisan all the time. I'm sorry, but to sit there and say that, oh, well, because he voted voted no on the beautiful bill because of this one thing in it, we're just gonna say that, oh no, he voted for no on because of its entirety. He just wanted to go against Trump's plan, even though he voted yes in the end. Like, that makes any sense?
the president by almost 2-1. They know what they wanted. They wanted a loyal representative, and they weren't getting that in Thomas Massie, and that's why he's not going to be in Congress starting in January.
Have they got the president they thought they were voting for in 2024?
Absolutely. They certainly think so. I mean, Thomas Massie had the opportunity to make the arguments about how, Trump was betraying his base. He wasn't making those arguments at all. Towards the end, he was making arguments about how me and Donald Trump.
Bro, his candidate wasn't making any arguments. I mean, at least bro was talking. His candidate didn't even sit down for a debate. Nobody knew who this man was. He just came in on a gust of wind talking about I'm a veteran.
Have a lot
with a Trump endorsement
of work to do still together, which is ironic because a few months earlier he was talking about how the Trump administration was the Epstein administration. That's the schizophrenia I'm talking about. He couldn't decide whether he needed to be pro-Trump to appeal to the voters in that district who liked Donald Trump, or against him because of the supposed betrayals. In reality, it was Thomas Massie hallucinating the president's platform into what he wanted to be, rather than looking at what it actually was.
Okay, Buckley Carlson.
Bears, can I just quickly ask Will a very quick question?
Sure.
Did the record-breaking amount of millions of dollars poured into this district in Kentucky by Miriam Adelson and 2 other Israel-centric billionaires, was that a significant factor in your view in Thomas Massie's defeat after 12 years in Congress?
Of course it was a significant factor, but that money probably would have been there regardless because President Trump had made Thomas Massie his target number 1.
On a primary? I'm sorry, but the average spent on a primary is like what, like $500,000? You guys put 38 million. I mean, all right, cool. Maybe you put in a couple million, okay, but 38 million? You guys were trying to overwhelm that election, and you did. Because, bro, with 38 million, all the ads that you can put out, all the AI slop, all the media push, all the bullshit. I mean, here's the thing: they spent most of that 38 million just attacking Massie and not really spouting the ideals of that candidate at all. It was just a full-on Massie attack for 38 million.
So he would have found donors to spend that money in any event. It's just that the pro-Israel donors were particularly happy to spend that money in this case, obviously, because they don't like Thomas Massie very much.
I wonder why.
Okay, let me bring in Buckley on this. What do you make of what do you make of it, Buckley? In particular, do you think this is because of Israel, or do you think it's actually because he took on Trump, as Will just said, over the big beautiful bill, and that was pretty much all of Trump's agenda? And therefore, if you're going to do that, Trump would see that as a massively antagonistic, negative attack on what he wants to do. And so
guys, make sure to smash that like button. And I guess there are a couple of you guys who are new to the channel, so make sure you subscribe to the channel. Appreciate the support, guys. We try to do this every day.
He decided to take him down.
I think Glenn made the case pretty convincingly with the data that he just presented here. I would just say I have a little bit different perspective in that we are so used to lying and obfuscation and weasel words, as we often see from Will Chambers here. But Donald Trump has clearly articulated exactly the way forward for the new MAGA coalition. He's straightforward and clear, as he was in that tape. He didn't show the whole clip, I don't believe, but he's talking now. He's acknowledged his donors are rich Israeli billionaires. He's acknowledged his base is actually in Israel. He's acknowledged he's pro-endless wars. He's acknowledged he's pro-surveillance. He's against the Constitution.
Yeah, I mean, bro, he's everything that MAGA's against. Like, people say that Thomas Massie's a rhino. No. The guy you guys replaced with Thomas Massie is a rhino. Pro-draft, pro-mass surveillance. I mean, bro, there's a lot of things this guy's for that I think MAGA would be disgusted by. You would hope they would be, but I guess they hated Massie that much. But hear it out, because I was hearing this stuff as well from multiple sources about how this guy is like pro-war, pro-draft, pro-Israel. I mean, ain't really too much wrong with being pro-Israel. I ain't gonna be too much of a dick about it. But the pro-surveillance part is really concerning.
He's acknowledged he's pro-endless wars. He's acknowledged he's pro-surveillance. He's against the Constitution. He's perfectly happy for Americans to be miserable economically. He's perfectly happy to listen to purveyors of global misery like Miriam Adelson, which is totally consistent with the people in Thomas Massie's district who suffer from joblessness and drug addiction and depression. Now we get more of that. it's kind of nice that Donald Trump made it very clear that there's going to be more disdain, more contempt, more drug addiction, more surveillance, more protection of pedophiles.
Agreed.
It's kind of nice to know your enemy. And I think if you talk to people in the base, in the grassroots of the Republican Party, you'll notice that a lot of people are actually leaving.
It's exactly this kind of talk, which is why Ed Galbraith is now going to be the representative from Kentucky. Exactly this kind of talk. Republican primary voters heard this message, and they
keep talking over me.
They said,
no. The Republican primary voters seen that AI slop, and they was like, "Oh, Massie bad." No, what Republican voters seen was, you know what? We don't really know anything about this guy politics, but Trump gave him the thumbs up, so we'll go ahead and bring him on in. And remember, and here's the thing. Like, because of that risky move, I swear they're gonna turn a Trump endorsement into a scarlet letter. I promise you guys, that's what's gonna happen. Because they're putting in these effing nobodies with no real, like, I'm gonna be real with you, with no real ideals to help their people, no real policy to help their people. They're just there as an Israeli plan, just to be another vote for a yes vote for Israel, to send weapons, funding, etc. That's why they replaced Massie, because he was always a no for Israel. That's why all these pro-Israel, all these Zionist billionaires went in on it, because they just needed another yes for Israel. It wasn't to help the American people. It wasn't even about, him disagreeing with Trump. It was all about being another vote for Israel. That's the truth. Okay, guys? There you go.
Trump talked over his supporters, the people who put him in office, Will. The people who put him in office voted for a very clear agenda, absolutely articulated over an entire decade. The people who voted for Thomas Massie in 24 are the same people who voted for Trump in 24. And they wanted less government surveillance. They wanted actually justice for pedophiles. They didn't want foreign wars. They didn't want more economic.
If you were right, Massie would have won, but he lost.
They don't want foreign interference in their country or in their district, and it's an absolute shame.
Here's the thing, though. You know what? We'd be able to accept Massie's loss if you didn't put $38 million into it. I'm sorry, but that's the problem. We understand that you bought a primary for $38 million while the other side only had like 500,000. So while they had very limited exposure, you guys had all the exposure in the world. Do you not see the problem in that? Do you not see the unfairness in that? I'm pretty sure if Massie had the same bag you guys was coming in, at least had like 30 million, he'd have won. But he only had like 500,000 to y'all 38 million, and nobody see the problem with that. I'm sorry, but that's our main argument when we said we need money out of politics so people can't do this bullshit. Like, exactly why. But all right.
But it is refreshing that Donald Trump has articulated that clearly, as he did last week when he said he does not care about Americans. He doesn't think about Americans before he makes decisions that impact their economic lives. So the other great thing is, the only straightforward thing that Ed Galbraith, deep state boob Ed Galbraith, who was too afraid to actually debate Massie, too afraid to articulate any of his positions beyond actually having a draft.
Facts.
So people in Kentucky now who can't find jobs, young people who can't find jobs, it's great. They can just go into the military and fight Israel's wars for Miriam Adelson, Paul Singer, and all the rest.
Okay, I want to bring in Clay. Clay, welcome back to Uncensored. First of all, I want to play...
Go Arsenal.
Good man. I want to play a clip from Massie's concession speech.
You know what's so effed up about my last point about them, taking Massie out because he always voted no on Israel? I promise you, if Massie was to vote yes on Israel but vote no on everything else, they wouldn't have put $38 million behind his opponent. Okay, guys? Say it again. If Massie voted no on everything else but voted yes on Israel, they wouldn't have put $38 million behind his opponent. Period, point blank.
And see what you think of this.
I would have come out sooner, but I had to call my opponent and concede, and it took a while to find Ed Galbraith in Tel Aviv.
Hey. Hilarious joke, by the way.
I did get to call through, though. I have called and conceded the race. We've been honorable the whole time, and we're going to stay that way.
So making a joke there, clearly that his opponent is completely in the thrall and control of Israel. Ben Shapiro thinks this is all Complete nonsense, unsurprisingly. Let's take a look at what he said.
Oh, boy.
The reality is that people who are pro-Israel do not like Thomas Massie because Thomas Massie has engaged in every conspiracy theory it is possible to engage.
People who are pro-Israel do not like Thomas Massie because every time there is a vote to send weapons to Israel or to send aid to Israel, he votes no. And you guys want all the support in our Senate that is possible. Why? Because you actually want to control our government. But that's besides the point. Well, that kind of goes into the point, but let's not worry about that right now. The main thing is that they wanted Massie out because he voted no on anything related to Israel, and honestly, anything that was related to foreign aid. If it includes sending money outside of America, he voted no on. So you can't even really say he had a thing against Israel. He had a thing against sending money outside of the United States. And I mean, let's be real. I think we all have a thing against that. But for some of y'all, when it comes to Israel, there's an exception. Oy vey.
And has made common cause with the most anti-Israel people. That's true. But the reason that Thomas Massie is actually in trouble is because the Trump administration has decided to oppose him on the basis of completely other issues. And so the usual game that is now played right now on the right, in the very podcastistan right,
what?
The game that is played is there will be a critique that has nothing to do with Israel. And the first thing you do is you claim that it's about Israel in an attempt to gin up.
I'm sorry, but what type of gaslighting is this, bro? Yeah, when Zionist billionaires, Israeli billionaires pull up and dump millions of dollars into the election, I think we can safely make it about Israel. I think that's a pretty safe, I would say, accusation, assumption, however you want to play it. I think it's safe to have it. Why? Because you're doing it right in our face.
The crazier part of the Republican base.
Now, I would say, Clay, that the trouble with Ben Shapiro's position is, and it may be why his own empire is crumbling like Rome in its last few days, is because he never accepts there is anything that could possibly be nefarious concerning anything to do with the Israeli government. And so I take what he says with a pinch of salt. And it is an undeniable fact that Aipac and other pro-Israeli lobby groups put in over $9 million in a deliberate bid to unseat Massie. Now, I accept that two things can be true at once. That may be because they wanted to, and it may be totally unconnected with the fact that Trump wanted to get back at Massie for not backing his big, beautiful bill. But I don't think you have to be a massive conspiracy theorist to think there might be a link here. What are your thoughts?
I'll get into that, Piers. Let me start with this. The people of Kentucky's 4th Congressional District have agency. They can make choices. If Kamala Harris had been running against Thomas Massie and $1 billion.
I'm sorry, nobody's saying that they don't have agency, but like I said, when you push $38 million, you kind of dominate the commercial market. You dominate the media market with that. Like all the ads you guys are putting out, all the propaganda against Thomas Massie's small 500,000. Bro could probably afford like 10 ads. Y'all afforded 10,000. What are you talking about? I'm sorry, but if these two expend the exact same on that primary, Thomas Massie would have dusted this guy.
Had been spent on Kamala Harris in the 4th Congressional District, she would have lost. Every lobbying group in America could have spent money on the wrong candidate in Kentucky's 4th Congressional District, and it wouldn't have mattered, right? So ultimately, this race came down to a decision between two people. And the people of Kentucky's 4th Congressional District, and by the way, all my family is from Kentucky before they moved down to Nashville to work in the DuPont factory here. All of my dad's family was from Kentucky.
That too. Hold on, let me not forget that. Shout out Sid. I appreciate you for bringing that one up. There was also the fact that he was pretty pissed off at Massie for pretty much pushing the Epstein files. Him and Rohanna teamed up for the Epstein Transparency Act and pretty much pushed Trump to make the Republicans vote for it. Because remember, Trump was actually trying to get the Republicans to vote no on it. But because of Thomas Massie and Rohanna, they pretty much got Trump to concede on that. And I'll be real with you. He'd been pissed with, he'd been really, I say this, that's when he hit his peak with Thomas Massie over the Epstein files. He was a little bit pissed with him over the big, beautiful bill. But in the end, Thomas Massie did vote for it. The Epstein files was going completely against what Trump wanted and the deep state.
There's a lot of hardworking, tough people in Kentucky, and they went out and they listened to the arguments and they decided by 10 points that they thought Gowrine would represent them better than Massie and the interest that they had. Now, was Donald Trump a big part of that? Yes, because Donald Trump would still win the state of Kentucky by 20 plus points if we had a presidential election statewide right now. What this really came down to is
it's a red state. That doesn't mean anything. But okay, no, go ahead and keep making meaningless points.
Donald Trump is more popular in the Kentucky 4th Congressional District than Thomas Massie is. And whomever Trump decided he was going to endorse, I believe would have won. Just like happened in Indiana with the state senators, just like we saw happen in Louisiana with the Senate race. Trump is more popular in
but here's the problem. Y'all didn't extremely outspend in those primary races. Y'all didn't have to do all that. Yeah, y'all still outspend the opponent, but not 38 million to 500,000. Like y'all didn't do that type of spending, and that kind of let you guys, and that let everybody know that, oh, it doesn't look like we can just say, oh, Massie bad and it's gonna get that guy over the line. We gotta put 38 million behind him and say Massie's bad and a Trump endorsement to get this guy to the victory. Don't you think that's a bit much? And does like everybody's gonna look at that like, yo, y'all did a lot to get this man Massie out, and then to include that as pro-Zionist money that went into this, now y'all look even crazier.
South, I live in Nashville, than any elected official anywhere in the South. And so if Trump comes out and says, this is my guy or this is my gal, his supporters are going to go out and vote. I actually think.
Then why did they pour a record-breaking number of money into Kentucky? Why did these billionaires pour a record-breaking amount of money into Kentucky? Are they just dumb?
I'm just saying, yeah, if they were so confident in this candidate, why you pour so much money into it? Like, think about it like this. Let's go back to the election with Kamala Harris and Trump. You could tell they weren't too confident in Kamala Harris as a candidate because they dumped a shitload of money into her, like a lot, to the point where they damn near went in debt. This guy, you could tell they weren't confident because Thomas Massie was comfortable with spending 500,000, but they was like, oh, yo, no, you're going to need about 38 million. Like, I'm sorry, but that's over 10xing. I mean, that's like, I'm sorry, 80xing what this guy was spending.
You realize they wasted it?
Let me just answer your question. Kamala spent $1 billion more in 2024 than President Trump's campaign did. If you talk to them, they believe if they'd had Kamala's money, they would have won in New Jersey and they would have won in Virginia. They won all 7 swing states. They spent money because in order to beat an incumbent, you have to make people aware that there is a challenger there. Everybody in the whole district knew Massie already. There's a reason, if you go to Louisiana, that no Republican incumbent senator had lost before 2012. Name recognition matters. If you have a brand new candidate that nobody knows, you have to introduce them to the district. Massie had been elected.
You need three. You need Miriam Adelson.
I think this was not about Israel. This was not about Israel. This was about the fact
why was Miriam Adelson involved? Why was Miriam Adelson involved? Why was she so involved? Why was her money so decisive?
There is a very small majority right now in the House. And the Trump team was frustrated because Massie, representing a rock-ribbed Trump district, was not supporting the primary agenda, the big, beautiful bill, trying to move on from the Epstein story. Has there been any benefit? He promised that there were going to be all these charges brought. And instead of being 100% behind President Trump's agenda, as the voters of Kentucky's 4th Congressional District have now shown that they want their representative to be, he decided that he wanted to fight President Trump. He has that right.
Marjorie Taylor Greene voted for the big, beautiful bill. Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Hold on. I think it helps Thomas Massie to argue, oh, Israel's against me, instead of pointing out the truth, which is he wasn't
why would he think that?
Of President Trump's agenda for the people of Kentucky.
I mean, like, why would he think that? Oh, is it because 3 pro-Israeli billionaires came in and just poured billions into his opponent? Like, yeah, why would he think that? Like, that's just so weird of him to ever think something so crazy. is like, okay, yeah, you're right. A whole bunch of Zionists pulled up and poured millions into your opponent's election, but that doesn't mean, you know, that it's about Israel. And yeah, it's true that you always vote no, and indeed the pro-Israel side always gets mad at you for that, but it doesn't mean that they would just come after you like that. I'm sorry, but if you're thinking that, bro, you are going. Like, that is just complete gullibility. Like, or you're just running cover, complete cover, like my man Benny Johnson. Like, bro, if you hear this man Benny Johnson's argument, oh my God, I was like, you know what? Benny Johnson is the reason why the Dems are using the term cuck-servative. Okay, it's people like Benny Johnson.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yo, Benny Johnson literally said, get down with the donor corruption. Get down with them pretty much buying whatever seat they want. You gonna get down with it and stop being a crybaby about it. I was like, yep, okay. Yep. You can get down on your knees for that, man, but not me, bro. You got it.
He voted for the big Marjorie Taylor Greene voted for the big, beautiful bill. She was on Trump's side with every domestic policy issue that you just said Massie impeded. Her blasphemy was the same as Massie's.
In Marjorie, did you listen to me?
I know you don't want this point. I know you don't want this point out. I know you don't want this point out. But no, because it's bullshit. Everything, this whole narrative is bullshit. This is all about anger at Massie because he voted against the big, beautiful bill. He was at least as angry at Marjorie Taylor Greene, even though she voted.
And that's what I'm saying. It's just like, no, it's not about the big, beautiful bill. It's about him voting against Israel. That's why the pro-Israelis guys went in on him. And then the Epstein files, he pretty much went in completely against Republicans and Trump with that. AKA, he's a nuisance to the deep state. And y'all voted him out.
For the big, beautiful bill. Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's not just Israel. It's not just Israel.
We don't.
Then why does every U.S. politician make
Well, actually, hang on. Don't talk over each other. Hang on one sec. Clay, on that last point, on that last point, I would take issue with that because there is some really shocking polling about Israel in America, which is that nearly 2/3 of Americans now have a negative view of Israel. So they're not disengaged in the way that you think.
That doesn't mean that Israel is the most important issue in America.
I didn't say the most important issue.
Israel is in the top.
No, but it's the most important issue. Okay, but the most important issue. Okay, hang on. Okay, but the most important. Hang on one second, Buckley. The most. I will come to all of you. The most important issue in America, according to the polling, is cost of living, and there is a direct line between cost of living and Israel, because if you believe the New York Times report
and the Iran war,
let me paint a picture for you, Clay, where there is a link, which is that the New York Times reported several weeks ago that it was Israel that basically persuaded Trump to go in on the strikes on Iran. The Iran war has become, I'm afraid, an increased.
Yeah, you want to know what else the New York Times also reported in their, what was it? I think it was in their opinions column. They pretty much reported and verified the fact that in Israeli prisons, Palestinians are being pretty much raped. Like, bro. And then Israel was now trying to sue the New York Times for what? Blood libel or slander or whatever, even though they done fact-checked it, asked guards, asked prisoners, and all that good stuff. But apparently you say anything against Israel, man. Oh, man, they're on your ass. Oy vey.
Fiasco, mainly because of the situation with the Strait of Hormuz, not because America hasn't pounded with the Israelis, the Iranian military, but the Iranian regime remains intact. They remain in control of the Strait of Hormuz. They remain with a tight grip now on the global energy economy. They are threatening to launch another barrage of missiles over at their Gulf state neighbors, which we know has pretty much, not paralyzed, but caused enormous damage to their ability to develop their new business model away from oil to safe tourism and so on. So, this has not been going the way that everyone was assured it would go. And a lot of people, Clay, my point to bring it together is that they believe that Trump was persuaded to do it by Israel. He's now come out today and said Netanyahu does what I tell him. A lot of people think it was the other way around with that decision. And that decision has had a massively negative impact on the cost of living to Americans, which is actually the number one issue they care about. And the interesting little twist, which I want you to explain to me, and then I'll get Glenn to respond to it, is notwithstanding that, Trump appears to still be wielding a lot of political power in the party. And my question would be, could he wield that power on his own, given his own very poor approval ratings right now, without the money from these billionaire Israeli donors? I think it's an interesting question.
I don't think that Massie would have won if Israel had not spent $1, right? If Miriam Adelson.
Bro, that is just delusional to say. I'm sorry, but no, if bro would have got, remember, nobody knows who he is in that district whatsoever. He just came in off the wind. And you're telling me that, oh, he'd have won without that $38 million? Bro, you're being delusional. Now you're just being delusional. They needed that $38 million to actually push him out there and push him hard out there. Like without it, if he just spent the same thing as Thomas Massie, bro, Thomas Massie would have got like 80% of the votes. He'd have completely cooked that guy. So let's not sit here and pretend like he didn't win because of that $38 million. Let's not sit here and pretend like that wasn't a factor.
But if AIPAC had not spent $1, Massie lost because President Trump is more popular in his district than Massie is. And as soon as President Trump said, Galrein is my guy, most of that money was spent to introduce Galrein. Now, to answer your question more direct, that's my opinion. I think the data will reflect it. Nobody knew him. They had to introduce him. That's why they had to spend so much money. He's running against an incumbent that everybody in the whole district knew on the Republican side. Now, on your point, you may remember this, Pierce. I'm going to be vindicated on this. Do you remember when I was on your show in the middle of the tariff wars and everybody, the stock market was down at 5,000 and I came on and I told you, Pierce, I will wear a clown nose on your show.
You did.
If within a year, the stock market is not massively higher than it is on this day. It's now up 50% since then. I will make a promise to you,